and final video in the song creation mixing tutorial. In this fifth video, what I'd like to do is use some EQ and the multi-band compressor to kind of finalize the track. Now, what we're doing in this video is not technically mastering, even though multi-band compression is used a lot of times in the mastering process. What we're doing right now is not officially mastering. I just wanted to go through and use the multi-band compressor very slightly to kind of tame some of the parts. For example, I want to kind of keep the bottom end, the kick drum and the bass, from taking over the entire track. What we'll do is, first, I've added the mixed track as a audio clip, and I'm going to go ahead and normalize that. Then what we'll do is, on the master mixer track, we'll go ahead and insert the parametric EQ2 plugin. And what I'd like to do is just use this preset for the 40 Hertz cutoff. And what this does and why this is important is any frequencies below, say, around 20 Hertz are going to be inaudible. The normal spectrum of human hearing is from 20 Hertz to 20 kilohertz. What I'm doing here with this cutoff at 40 Hertz is just kind of gets any kind of really low frequency, muddy kind of stuff taken out. It doesn't really change much as far as the track is concerned, and I'll show you that as we move along here. But it's important to use a low frequency cutoff whenever you're dealing with a track that has a heavy bass line, like we do right here. What I'm also going to do is insert another instance here of the parametric EQ, and this is what we're going to use for our actual EQ. So this will be our master EQ, and I'm going to go ahead and play the track and just move around some stuff. If you checked out the EQ2 tutorial that I did, I give a little bit more information in there as to how to use EQ. What we're going to do here is just kind of try to cut some of the muddiness out of the track and accentuate some of the highs. So I'll go ahead and play that, and when we get done, we'll start with the multi-band compressor. So we've gone through and made some slight changes to the EQ. Again, what I've done here is kind of try to cut out some of this area where it's some of the areas where it's going to get muddy here. And also I try to bring up the bass a little bit right here at 318 Hertz, just because I feel like the bass is getting kind of swallowed up in there compared to the kick. And we'll also try to resolve that with the multi-band. And then also I put a little bit of a boost here at 10.2 kilohertz. So what we'll do next is go in here with the multi-band and add that on. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off to start off with. Now, the first thing to mention as far as the multi-band compressor is concerned is basically all it's doing is taking the sound and splitting it up into 3 frequencies, and those are represented here on this graph. And then this way we can actually go through and adjust the compression for each level. And you see we have our 3 bands right here again represented here on the graph. Now as I go through, I'd like to play the track, and what I'm going to try to do first is try to kind of tame that bass sound. For that, I'd like to have a quick attack but also have a longer release time, so that way it kind of flattens out the bottom end and we don't end up with like a really big pumping kind of sound. So I'm going to play the track through, and I'm going to be bypassing the mid and high bands while I'm doing this, just so that we can focus on the bass sound. And again, we're not going to be going overboard with this. We're going to try to keep the compression at a minimum level, and I'll show you what happens if you go overboard with it. So we just saw how using the multi-band compressor, using the low band only and bypassing the mid and high, when we went through and applied a slight bit of compression here at about 21.3 decibels and ratio of 1.5, we were able to kind of tame that lower end sound. It wasn't so overpowering and it wasn't so deep and muddy anymore. It's still deep and it still hits hard, and when we went through and adjusted the attack and release settings, again we have a quicker attack time and then a longer release time. That kind of flattens out the entire bottom end so that we don't get a pumping kind of sound. And you saw when I first got started, again I was going to show that example of when you overdo it, we saw how we just came up with this really terrible sounding bottom end that was just so clunky and chunky and muddy that it was just completely unusable. Again, you know, you're going to have to adjust the filter over here according to, you know, the specifications of the song. In this case, we got it moved over, let's see, it was right about 285 hertz. And, you know, you can move these around to wherever you need them to be, but for our purposes, I wanted to encompass both the kick drum and the bass within that one filter. Now, as far as the mid-band, because, I mean, it sounds decent right now, I don't really want to mess around with the mid-band too much, but I will try to play around with the high band a little bit. And again, I'm going to be moving the frequency filter over here. But what we're going to try to do is, again, with the same type of approach, have a faster attack time and a longer release time and a slight compression. And the purpose of this is I want to try to take out some of the scratchy kind of sound, some of the really high-end kind of scratch that the hi-hat and the cymbals and the extra percussion are having. By compressing just slightly, this is actually, again, just going to kind of flatten out that top end a little bit, so it's more kind of like using an exciter plugin, and it's going to kind of make the top end blend in a little bit better, while at the same time keeping that same top end kind of sizzle. So we just saw how making some slight successive changes over the duration of adding in some effects here with EQ and compression, how we were able to come up with a nice tight sound. It was balanced all the way through and nothing was too overpowering. And of course, again, just like with the song creation part of this tutorial and the mixing and now with the finalizing portion, we're doing this in a quick, dirty kind of way. We're not really going through and fine-tuning everything and getting everything exactly how we want. And really, that's just because we didn't have the time to, go through and really get in depth with everything. Again, we just saw how using the multi-band compressor in a slight way on the bottom band and here on the high band as well, how we were able to create a tighter sound to our final track here. And then also I used the stereo separation here in the master channel just slightly to give us a little bit more space. Again, remember with the EQ, and this can be done on any EQ, but to create a cut somewhere in the bottom range, so that way you don't have frequencies below, say, 20 to 40 hertz, 45 hertz coming through and muddying up the track. And then we also went through and made some small cuts here to our master EQ. So basically, the thing that I really want to get across to you as far as the multi-band compressor, while it's a powerful tool, you really need to be careful not to overdo it because you can destroy the track very quickly by doing that. Keep in mind, again, that this is not mastering. So the goal is not to try to make your track sound like it does on the radio or on a CD. For that, I would definitely suggest taking your music to a mastering house and having someone with an objective ear who has the equipment and the know-how to really take the time to work on your track. That's not to say that you can't master your own stuff at home using FL Studio, but as far as the technicalities involved with the frequency spectrum and maximizing and stereo separation, all that kind of stuff, phasing issues, you really need to have someone with an objective ear and the equipment and experience who can sit down and give your track a listen and really do it justice rather than you doing it at home. So again, I just want to get across that the purpose of the multi-band compressor is to finalize your track, but it's not to master your track. Finalizing, what I'm considering finalizing, is just getting your track to a point where you feel good about letting other people listen to it. Getting it to a point where you'd feel good about sending it to a mastering house. But again, you don't want to overdo it, because if you destroy the track at this level when you send it to a studio to be mastered by a mastering engineer, they won't necessarily be able to salvage everything if you've overdone the multi-band compression and EQ and everything else. So I hope that I've been able to inspire you and maybe give you some tips along the way for song creation and arrangement, as well as mixing and final compression. I want to thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.